everybody. For those of you that hit that reminder, those alerts, you're getting notifications, you're coming in, you're going to do what I'm going to do. We're all going to grab our phones. We're all going to start sharing. We're going to do watch parties and all that. I don't have to do so many watch parties because we are broadcasting on Facebook and a couple places on Facebook, the Leading Women page, and we're also over on YouTube. And shout out to you guys watching on YouTube. Let me tell you about engaging with us. Now, because we're coming through a couple of platforms, we can't see when you pop in, but we can see when you say hello. So please just drop us a comment and say hello and let us know that you are watching. And if you have comments throughout the show, we'll bring those on air. So while I go over and do a couple other producer things, Angela is going to tell you on Leading Women Weekly what we chatted about last week.
Hey everybody, I'm trying to do exactly what Yolanda said. I'm over here on my laptop sharing and posting and doing whatever. So last week we had two guests. That was an exciting, it was exciting to be able to talk about, to talk to two different people. We talked about time management, and I'm always late, so this was a sneak attack from Yolanda Lattimore. Let me add, I was not on time today. So much for that failed plan. But no, it was really, I thought it was an interesting discussion. And Yolanda, what was her name? Dr.
Deborah Johnson Blake.
Deborah Johnson Blake.
Mm-hmm,
I knew it was Johnson.
Mm-hmm.
Deborah Johnson Blake. And so she is a PhD, basically, a real PhD in time management. And so she's got all kinds of resources, books, videos to help with time management. And what I thought was really compelling in that discussion is that given the way that our lives have changed with COVID, with the COVID pandemic, even if you had good systems in place, I'm going to pretty much guess that your systems are shot, right? And so being able to figure out how to use, what kind of reminders, how to write things down, use calendars, apps, whatever, pen and paper calendars. I use a paper calendar. I like that. It still works for me, a wall calendar. But also to understand that you have to have rest and downtime. And she did indicate that there's a difference between procrastination and rest. And I think that if we can, sometimes we're beating ourselves up thinking we're procrastinating when really what we need is rest. And so, if that tendency to procrastinate can be the indication that you need rest. So that was very good. And then we had Dr. Tachi on again to talk about, all things media. And it just seems like every week now we have some sort of media.
We had
story.
Triana, not Dr. Tachi last week. We had Triana.
Oh, we had Triana. Right. I'm jumping
Triana
weeks.
Arnold.
Well, I don't. The reason that Yolanda.
I was saying, like, wait a minute. Okay. And you're supposed to be the one to remember.
I wrote it down. I even have it written down, and I looked, and I still, So we talked to Triana Arnold, Jane, about running for office, and the abysmal turnout in the runoffs that caused her to lose when she actually had the majority vote.
Yeah. What did she say she lost by? What was it? 300
votes.
300 votes.
And so she was running for Georgia State Senate out in sort of western
Carrollton and Cobb, I believe it is.
Right. So a little bit west of the city of Atlanta. And
or Carrollton and Paulding, one of those.
I thought it was like wasn't it Carrollton, Paulding, and Douglas? There was like
three areas. It's three. It's West Georgia, pretty much.
Right. So sort of the west and sort of in West Georgia. She lost by 300 votes. And what did she say? There was only like 3,000 that participated on the Democratic side. 21,000 Republicans turned out. So, there's this issue, and Yolanda, you've talked about it a lot. We've talked about it a lot, which is we're told to vote, right? And it's like, look, I'm voting. I'm out here voting, and nothing's changing, right? And so there's people are becoming not disenfranchised, disenchanted with voting, yet voting is still important.
I'll tell you this much. It changed my opinion because even on the day we were talking with her, I was so mad at voting coming on. In fact, I had come up with a catchphrase: vote, but F voting. Okay. Like you gotta vote. You gotta vote, but my God, are you ever gonna get anything truly, really out of it? But in listening to her and knowing, because one of the things, and I'm gonna tell you what I really loved was my girls and I, we all go vote together. we literally go vote together. And when we walked in, and my daughter, Petty Betty, got a sample ballot, because you get a sample ballot and kind of, look over and discuss, because you really don't know everything that's on the ballot. If you're going through media, you'll never know. But we go in, and my daughter was like, well, Mom, half these people, were my friends, because a lot was on your ballot besides the national and judicial and all of that. It is local politics. And I do have a number of people in our community, because we are in essence a real community. We know people in the neighborhood. And a lot of people and I run with a lot of civic-minded people, which is why I'm so overly frustrated about voting right now, because I know people that have run and have had, like you said, abysmal results. 300 people. Now you can entice 300 people to do anything.
For sure.
Anything. Like, hey, let's go buy this. I'm an influencer. I can easily entice 300 people to do something. But man, for her to lose, and we know how hard Triana Arnold James is. In fact, she works so hard, so passionate about it. There are a number of stock images that newspapers are using when they're talking about these different issues, and I just tag her in it, like, girl, here you are again. Just yesterday, WABE had posted a story, and even though the photo was about women's rights, and the photo that they use, it's her protesting, and I'm like,
it's literally, she's the face of
protesting women's rights,
protesting and being politically involved, and she couldn't win. Now, I'm not.
What was the name of her group?
Georgia. So she is the president of Georgia National Association for Women, the Georgia chapter now. So it's National Association for Women, which has been around a long time. I remember when I was a kid. Yeah.
Which means she's not only representing Black women, she's representing all women. She's representing women.
Absolutely.
Not only that, she's representing women, veterans. She's representing moms. She's representing, all across the spectrum. She is out there, and she is representing, and see all that she's doing, and she wants to represent her community, and only 300 people, but keep in mind, she won. She had the lead.
Yeah.
Okay. So to have the lead, kind of like the Falcons, to have the lead and not win the runoff, that's disappointing. That's so very disappointing.
And she was not going to run. She was begged, she was encouraged to run, and she'd already won what she was for lieutenant governor, and she was like, I'm done. I'm just going to go work on other things. And so she came back in, and so you could really tell, she was on just voice. A
little bit of burnout,
but you could hear it in her voice. And, and people say, I'm never going to do it again. And then they turn around and do it. So, I don't live in her district. I certainly would have voted for her. And I said, I don't know who won. I don't know anything about them, but I'm like, here is an incredibly qualified woman. And what she talked about as well was the failure of the Democratic Party. There was no infrastructure support. She hinted that there is dirty dealings. And so this is what causes all of us to say, I'm not going to, I don't want to be involved. I don't want to be involved, but it really does make a difference. And so one of the things that she was involved in, which was, I not seen her update on this, was they were organizing a direct action down for Irwin County and the detention center where the women were being given forced hysterectomies. I don't know what has come there, but I do know of another group that went down on the weekend that was a part of a church group that was, Unity. I don't know, one of these. And someone that I follow, and I follow the pastor of the church, and they went down, and it was really a fraught experience. So they took a convoy of cars down there to protest. The authorities had blocked the exit. So if you're not from this area, where this detention center is what was that, probably about an hour south of Macon. I mean, it's out in the middle of Nowhereville, Georgia, right? And I mean, it's just straight open highway and farms and factories, right?
In
So
prisons.
in prisons, yeah. And
Arms, factories, and
yeah.
prisons.
And so, and it's one of these where there'll be miles between exits. So she, they were backed up on the exit. The exit's closed. Finally, somebody came through and just, was explaining to each one of them, it said it was a Sikh man, right? So here's a man in a turban going car to car, telling them where to go. So, go down, turn around, go back to this exit, go, to help them get. So they went
trying
through
to
that.
get to the
At some point, all the cell service was blocked. They cut their cell phones. So she says, we're out here in the middle of nowhere and no cell service, right? She said, then they got there, and she showed video of it. It was not public, so I couldn't really share it. But and they were told when they got there, don't get out of your car, because first of all, there was a big federal like ICE presence. But the road leading behind the detention center, right, was lined with rednecks, white supremacists with their pickup trucks and their guns.
Wow, really?
Yeah. So they were standing. They were all leaned on their truck hoods as this crowd went by. And so she, she's a pastor, and so one of them yelled at her. She has this on tape. She says, "Go back to your gay church," and she's like. And she's like, happily, when I'm done, I'm going back to my gay church. Yay. But she was like, it was so, and so she was videoing.
Then don't you find that odd when you look at like yesterday, everybody's waiting on the verdict, and right before we came on, one of the officers in the Breonna Taylor case, it was reported to have been indicted. But when you hear like they were getting ready for the verdict to come down, some verdicts, some decision, decision.
They were all going free.
Well, the thing about it is when you hear that there was a state of emergency for that, and there was all these things to protect these buildings, but yet, people won't deal with this terrorism that's continuing to rise up in America, coming out of the rednecks and the Klan, who are people who want to be representative of that.
Yeah.
And the fact that this is happening, that it is happening in places and people are encountering this, and and then they keep trying to make it an argument of free speech. This is not argument. This is not free speech.
No,
this is not free speech at all. This is terrorism,
intimidation,
intimidation. It's literally terrorism. I was sitting, I sent you a message earlier about I was watching the news, and first of all, you already know anybody that's on the news, the anchors, they just read what's put in front of them. So you got to imagine in this political climate, and I wish I want to go around and like I want to go and like select a couple of news stations, because the way it was read, you could tell it's probably been sent out. This is the verbiage of the day. And when they were describing the deaths, they keep saying, we've hit this 200,000 and we just won't drop below. So we're continuously at 200,000. But the way to maintain at 200,000, they said that we are experiencing, it was like they likened it to, or the language they use, it's likened to experiencing 9/11 daily. Wow. Because 9/11 is what everybody. It's when you can talk about 9/11 with anybody, right? Whether born or not.
Yeah.
Because that's like America's Savior's Day. Like, we came together as a country. When actually we didn't, because I literally had to stay up all night and help people who were looking for African Americans that were lost in that, because nobody wanted to talk about that. Of course, the news we got to put out just what's going to emit the emotions of Americans, and so the faces of the victims all changed and so forth. And I just remember people trying to find loved ones. But the way, like, when you say how many people died in 9/11, it was 3,900 or 3,000 or so,
3,000
right?
some, yeah.
Okay, and then, of course, my tie to the 3,000th death in the war to follow. So, you can relate to that. If you have to say to somebody, have you ever seen 3,000 people perish? Right? Because the thing that we have going on in America is trying to get people to relate to what it means to perish. We talk about slavery, we talk about the Holocaust. People can't relate to millions died. Nobody can deal with that.
No, that's the AIDS quilt. That was the whole idea of the AIDS quilt, was to try to visualize the loss.
Mm-hmm.
We don't. I remember distinctively, and it was probably the New York Times when did the 3,000, right? And they did the numbers, but it was like all with like bodies, right? It was like little figures, right? To try to give you whatever that number was, a visual of it. And that was, I believe, was for the war. I believe it was for the war after when we hit that, and it was and I can remember that, right? And it was, but it was because it was made up of 3,000 some little images,
Right.
and it's
right.
like, but yeah, we have a very hard time. I mean, we have a hard time visualizing past about a dozen, right? Our brains just then go, oh, it's a lot,
right?
And so
because naturally you want to suppress that. You don't want to know what.
No,
that
you don't want
like.
to have that.
You
right?
know, you don't want to know. You don't want to relate to that. You know,
Yeah.
even when we do 9/11, and then it's like, but every year, you know, we pause as a country and they read those names. Just imagine every day. There are if you look online, guys, there are those who are memorializing these individuals that we are losing to something that we shouldn't even be dealing with as a war, as a planet. Because I mean, and it is a kind of a climate thing or whatever. But there are those that are memorialized. I know that they're starting to show little vignettes of people so that we can put a face on this, because we've got to. And I always say, you know, I love to say, women could have healed the world yesterday, you know, but they kept us distracted, you know, and busy, you know, and unrelating to all of these things, which is why I love having Deborah and Triana on last week, because I think we just have to find the time.
Yes.
I think, you know, to do all of this. Like you and I, you know, it was a struggle for you and I to find the time to come together. And one of the things I love, I was looking back through my Facebook memories, and I was looking for a photo to put on audio thing. You needed an avatar. I needed an avatar. And I saw pictures of, if you go on my face, and I don't know, you know, who goes onto their own Facebook page.
Exactly. You don't ever go look at your own page, right?
I go in my Facebook page, and I'm trying to find a quick photo to send for this avatar. And I saw all these little pictures of you and I, you know, as I'm scanning, I'm like, oh my God. And, you know, things you don't, because you don't remember. Like, I'm trying to remember, like, a couple of years ago when I did the luncheon out here, and I'm like, wow, Angela came and supported that, you know?
Yeah, no, and I remember that because I was wearing my hat.
You did, and
I wore a hat.
It's the gorgeous picture girl over there on my Facebook page.
Yeah, no, it's a good picture of us. No,
you
when you said that,
it.
I said it's a picture of me and you where I'm wearing the hat. It's a great picture of us. Yeah.
But you know what, though, Angela, what I loved about that, because that was a year me coming out of, you coming out of, and I see that picture, and I know what it took for you to get dressed. You know, this is the input. What is it? Being an empath. I'm looking at that picture. I'm like, Angela was having a good day.
Yeah.
When she came to Douglasville, that means she got dressed. That means that everything. See, when we can relate ourselves, when I can relate to you that way, and I understood, like, girl, you drove to Douglasville to come and support me. I know what you had to do at home in order to just be able to leave the house.
Yeah.
When we as women can't have that kind of quick understanding, just glancing at that picture, I'm like, oh, my girl must have had everything must have been great that day. For you to make it out. When we get to a point we can't understand it, somebody's gonna look at it and they're gonna, you know, make their assumptions. Man, these two women, they get to do everything, and not even understand what you and I were going through in that time. It was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, I think somewhere around September or whenever.
Right.
Because it was 2018, which meant it was 1 year after me losing my mom, and you had. I don't know the time frame between my mother and your mother. But I just remember us having that conversation. You were telling me, hey, let me tell you. And this is the whole lean in thing. Andrew was like, let me lean in. Let me tell you what's, you know, going on and how you're going to feel and how you need to process that. Too many of us don't do that.
Yeah.
You know, and that's why we have so many people out here trying to figure this out. That's why women spend billions of dollars every summer on through the fall trying to go to these conferences and all of this. Trying to process all of this stuff. That's why. Go ahead.
Absolutely, and it's about vulnerability, right? And the reason the reason that I ended up sharing my experience with you is because you shared your experience about your mom in the nursing home, and I was like, you know, I should be more upfront about what's happening with me, right? Because I went through a major change in my you know, of being on the out and doing and whatever to being you know, very attached to home as a caregiver for now for many years. And there's a shame in it when there's no shame, but I felt
Yeah.
ashamed, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh,
Right.
because I can't do what
Because
I used to do.
you couldn't show up.
Right.
You
And it's
could
like,
not
and that
show
was,
up. Yeah.
and this is what I was known for, right? It's like, I'm known for being everywhere, right? And it's like, and now I can't be there. And so I feel, and it's like, there was no reason to be ashamed, but I did. And so sometimes we don't want to share these experiences because we feel like, again, it's like some of this is we've worked very hard to create a brand persona or whatever. It wasn't even that, right? It's just that I just felt bad, right? And there was always a part of me that thought, if I just could get it together, maybe I could just get it together a little bit more, right? But because we don't talk, because we as women don't talk about what this experience is. And I will say the nice thing about, not nice thing, the positive, and I don't know, about COVID,
the pivot,
everybody being in the same situation. It's okay to talk about it. So all these women that are saying, I'm going insane because I'm trying to work at home, either I'm the one who's still having to do all the main responsibilities of taking care of children in the house. And, plus I got to figure out how to disinfect groceries and cook and do whatever. And, we're actually able to talk about it in a way that prior to, it could feel very isolating, particularly, like I say, talking about the pivot. If you're going through a change and you don't really know what the pivot is yet, you're in the pivot process, right? But you don't know where you're going to land. It can feel very, it can feel very embarrassing and shameful, right? And so, but because you were vulnerable, I was vulnerable, we were able to do that. Look at what came from it.
Hold on, Angela. We have got some breaking news. Belinda is saying you guys there are airing a special report about Breonna Taylor documentary. Thought you should know as to what happened during the shooting. Is that on? I don't see on. It says ex-cop Brett Hackinson indicted. I don't see video. Kentucky cop who killed Breonna Taylor charged with wanton endangerment. Let's see. Those are some of the headlines that are coming through. Okay, right about now. Let's go a little bit to this.
I think it is worth repeating again that our investigation found that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in their use of force after having been fired upon by Kenneth Walker. Secondary to this justification,
can you guys hear that?
A little more volume.
Reach different conclusions,
creating
a reasonable doubt in the evidence about who fired the fatal shot. I certainly understand the public's desire for answers, and many have questioned the length of the investigation. Simply put, we had to try every means necessary to determine who fired the fatal shot before the investigation could be completed. With a thorough and complete knowledge of all evidence collected in this case, lawyers with our Office of Special Prosecutions presented the findings of our independent investigation before a grand jury comprised of Jefferson County residents beginning on Monday and concluding today. In Fletcher v. Graham, the Kentucky Supreme Court said that the grand jury has competing but balanced functions. On the one hand, its purpose is to investigate allegations of criminal conduct and determine if there is probable cause to believe that a crime has been committed. On the other, the grand jury serves to protect the public against unfounded criminal prosecutions where probable cause is lacking. The grand jury is unique in our criminal justice system because it operates independent of the court and the prosecutor. The hallmark of the grand jury is its independence from outside influence. This independence is necessary to ensure that justice is done both for the victims and for the accused. After hearing the evidence from our team of prosecutors, the grand jury voted to return an indictment against Detective Hankinson for 3 counts of wanton endangerment for wantonly placing the 3 individuals in apartment 3 in danger of serious physical injury or death. The charge of wanton endangerment in the first degree is a Class D felony, and if found guilty, the accused can serve up to 5 years for each count. Kentucky law states that a person is guilty of wanton endangerment in the first degree when, under circumstances manifesting extreme indifference to the value of human life, he wantonly engages in conduct which creates a substantial danger of death or serious physical injury to another person. My office is prepared to prove these charges at trial. However, it's important to note that he is presumed innocent until proven guilty. During the last 6 months, we've all heard mention of possible charges that could be brought in this case. It's important to understand that all of the charges that have been mentioned have specific meanings and ramifications. Criminal homicide encompasses the taking of a life by another. While there are 6 possible homicide charges under Kentucky law, these charges are not applicable to the facts before us because our investigation showed, and the grand jury agreed, that Mattingly and Cosgrove were justified in the return of deadly fire after having been fired upon by Kenneth Walker. Let me state that again. According to Kentucky law,
Don't
the
say
use
that
of
again.
force by Mattingly and Cosgrove was justified to protect themselves. This justification bars us from pursuing criminal charges in Miss Breonna Taylor's death. The truth is now before us. The facts have been examined, and a grand jury comprised of our peers and fellow citizens has made a decision. Justice is not often easy. It does not fit the mold of public opinion, and it does not conform to shifting standards. It answers only to the facts and to the law. With this in mind, we must now ask ourselves, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
Will we continue to prosecute the charges brought in this case as it now proceeds through the justice system and moves to trial? That is our responsibility. And this will be done while the FBI continues its investigation into potential violations of federal law. I know that not everyone will be satisfied with the charges we've reported today. My team set out to investigate the circumstances surrounding Ms. Taylor's death. We did it with a singular goal in mind, pursuing the truth. Kentuckians deserve no less. The city of Louisville deserves no less. Every person has an idea of what they think justice is. My role as special prosecutor in this case.
It's hard. It's hard to listen to.
Really,
in pursuit of the truth. My job is to present the facts to the grand jury, and the grand jury then applies those facts to the law. If we simply act on emotion or outrage, there is no justice. Mob justice is not justice.
Of course, speak to that, right?
Violence is not justice.
like Breonna Taylor didn't die as a result of mob justice.
And in our system, criminal justice isn't the quest for revenge. It's the quest for truth, evidence, and facts, and the use of that truth as we fairly apply our laws. Our reaction to the truth today.
I want him to conclude, but
I know when you have to talk this long.
The truth, or do we want a truth?
Yeah, it's wrong. Long is wrong.
Yeah.
Do we want the facts? Or are we content to blind?
I'm gonna stop.
Yeah, that's I've heard enough.
Yeah, because now comes the forgiveness narrative. Now comes the stand down, be well behaved. Because the mob is not those that are gonna. Those are avengers. Okay. Yep. The mob were the ones who ran it on her. Now I'm gonna. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna be. The mob broke into their house. Broke into the house, right? And I'm not gonna say I'm totally dissatisfied because what I did hear I did hear policing change. Thank you so much, our viewer, Linda. She said they entered the home illegally. Let me go to her statement. Can you believe that? Let me say what I want to think about this. Is they entered the home illegally. What about the right to defend and be safe in their home? We do have to get somebody on that. What we have to be concerned with right now, particularly as leading women and with an election coming up, and this right here, okay, first of all, that's local. You heard what he said. He said Louisville and he said Kentucky. Okay.
Yep.
So that's local, right?
Yep.
So that's what you need to do after you finish voting for president and all that stuff on the first page of your ballot. You need to make it all the way to the end of your ballot, because what he was basing it on right there are laws that are passed for Kentucky. He then said, that's how we're going to deal with this in Louisville and Kentucky. Now comes what needs to happen on a federal level.
Right.
He said, still an investigation going on there. But what I heard was, and what I know, those who are getting ready to put on that uniform right now, those two other officers, they escaped by the skin. They just escaped by their skin, because there was a law that protected them. Because they fight. They're saying that because we don't have the video on this one. This is one that's not open and shut because we don't have video. They escaped because they are saying that they return fire once fired upon. And the one that was indicted is the one that started it all, because he fired upon innocent people. Those innocent people then fired upon the police officer. And then they, by law, were then able to exchange fire. But again, we just talked before we heard this verdict. We just sat here and talked to you guys about how 300 votes separated your livelihood from having somebody at the table who can change justice and make laws. 300 people staying home now means that what goes on in West Georgia, you don't have anybody. We don't have the right people at the table. Okay, they had somebody in Louisville. The right people were at the table to some degree, because they then were able to come with an indictment. And whether they did it because, hey, listen, we don't want Louisville to burn, throw this guy under the bus or whatever. But people who were putting on the uniform today now realize, hey, listen, I've got to adhere to something, because here comes an indictment. And it's been a while since we have had an indictment in cases like this. And let me tell you, I just got tagged in one. As a matter of fact, Belinda's one of our viewers, my cousin, her daughter tagged me in a new hashtag. Unfortunately, Vincent Truitt. Let me just let that family know that I contacted. In fact, I looked it up, and a dear friend, we have to have him on too, Gerald Griggs. Gerald A. Griggs, everybody knows Gerald, is already working on that case. And this is another young man who died in a police shooting. And she tagged me in one of their immediate updates from when the incident happened, where they said, he was severely injured or whatever, but apparently he did die of his wounds. And so, again, even right here in Atlanta, because a lot of times when we hear about the protests going on in Atlanta, people, they tie it to other things. And I was even listening in the book, and we're going to talk about the book that you have.
Right.
Are we going to move on are we going to go into that book? I don't know. I know we got it as an alternative, but we didn't.
We can. I think we should bring it up
about that too.
Yeah, since you've read
I had to start over.
Yeah,
I had to go back to the beginning, because remember, let me just say this though. What I like about some things that I heard in the book is that it's just exhausting, because it's about marching, it's about protesting or avenging. I don't even want to say protesting, because we're in a state of avenging these deaths, right? Because they're happening so fast and coming so furious, and it's not just Black lives. Because Black lives are just twice as likely. Okay, so where's the other? Where are the ones that are just likely? You know what I'm saying? Trying to get those voices together, and so much going on with this. But I don't know.
Well, and just to say what book we're talking about. We're talking about Memorial Drive by Natasha Trethewey.
I'll bring it up on the thing.
And it is the book that Yolanda's talking about, and I have a signed copy, but it's in the other room. I did a virtual book event with Natasha Trethewey. Yes, so there we go. Memorial Drive, referencing the street, the road, the boulevard in Atlanta, Georgia, that runs from downtown Atlanta out to Stone Mountain, and where we have the side of the mountain engraved with the Confederate memorial. So the discussion, Natasha Trethewey, who became Poet Laureate of the United States. She's a professor. She was a professor at Emory. She's recently moved somewhere into the Midwest as a professor. So, a noted writer, poet, professor who who had blocked out. She says she basically blocked out the murder of her mother by her stepfather when she was 18 years old. And so she went back to reconstruct her memory, thus memorial as well, of those years and that experience. And they're born in Mississippi. She was born on the 100th anniversary.
Interracial.
She's biracial, born in Mississippi on Confederate Memorial Day, April 26th. She was born April 26th, 1966. And it was the centennial of Confederate Memorial Day. And she's a person who resonates with numbers, right? She's like you, Yolanda. She's into the numbers, and she always felt that was significant, right? So her story crosses sort of that
numbers and superstition. That's why I had to I kept hearing. I'm like, okay, this is getting real familiar. Let me stop. And it's a 4-hour audio book.
It's not long.
It's not long. So let me start over on this book.
And I really recommend the audio. I listened to it on audio first, ended up buying the book because of the book signing. But she's a poet. And so when she's reading her work, you hear the poetry of it. And it really is.
Is that her doing the
That's her
reading?
doing the reading.
That's her. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And so you can hear the rhythm, you hear the language. So it's her use of language. And that's why it can be 4 hours, because poets know how to boil things down. Right.
And she does.
And it's not a poet. It doesn't read like a poem. It reads like a story. But she's able to boil
just the language.
The language.
Really good with the language. Yeah.
And I was like, to talk about what it was like in Georgia's the deep South, but Mississippi is the deep, deep South. She moved from Mississippi to Georgia.
Let me ask you this, and I'm one. I don't mind telling me the ending. I want the ending, but I haven't got. I'm on 6, so I haven't gotten to. Let me see in the chapters. I haven't gotten. I only have 2 more to. No, wait a minute. No, no, I don't. There's much more. Okay, so I'm in the first half.
Yeah,
there's 1. There's 2. It's broken down in 2 halves. So I haven't gotten to where Memorial Drive comes in.
Yeah, I'm
at the part where they're just becoming the blended family. Right. I'm at that part. So I don't in the part in her youth when it was just she and her mom, they lived in my neighborhood. And that's one of the reasons when you first mentioned this book, I was thinking it was another author with ties to Mississippi and their memoir of their mother, but her mother died just from alcoholism. So I went into it thinking it was that story. So I had to stop because she's literally talking about our neighborhood, and because we moved like everybody else, moved into a neighborhood, part of desegregation and so forth, and white flight and all this kind of stuff. And she's talking about the school. And and I'm trying to figure, man, where she's describing, where would she have lived? And I'm like, wait a minute. And then she mentioned the school, so I'm thinking about the zoning of the school. Yeah. And I'm like, oh my God. So, and then she talked about her mother working at Underground. And one of the reasons I went ahead and started listening to it because I'm in an Atlanta group, and they just chose it also. Angela again, scooping folk. They just chose it as their book to read, and so I'm like, okay, let me go because I know they're gonna. Because and one is the Vanishing Black Atlanta is a group, and so I know that the dialogue is really gonna get there. And it's something interesting that I experienced this week. I had to deal with the loss of a thing this week, and I had to. I'm having to mourn the loss of another thing. It's not a person attached to a person, but just another thing. And I'm having to let go. And so I'm in a place. I'm in a place, and I'm in a weird place this week because it's just not easy. And so I'm listening to this and her trying to go back and piece all of this I love her language. You said like her being a poet. There's a lot of language that's helping us understand because as children, you ask a lot of questions to which you don't get any answers.
Right.
So you then have to process what's going on around. And there's so many adults of us in our generation right now. And if anybody doesn't realize, Belinda is like the new matriarch of our family. She's the oldest cousin, right? And so we all just went through, the losing of, passing of our matriarchs and so forth. But trying to remember, like we all get together and people are talking about times of life and this, that, and the other. And you realize like, whoa, either you like she did, blacked out on it, suppressed it, or just, it just didn't come up. It just doesn't resonate because you didn't bring it forward. I love how she talks about having to go back. So I'm dealing with this thing like, man, this is something, I can't believe I lost that. It should have been something a little bit more value to me. But it was a great value to me. I just didn't have the access to it that I wanted. But then I'm like, wait a minute. 2 people discarded it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like 2 people in the family discarded it. And I'm mad.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm just straight up pissed off. But I'm pissed off. But I don't want it to impact it. And I'm saying to myself, well, that shouldn't change any relationship,
Right.
Because what you do have of it is these insane and wonderful memories of it.
Right.
And maybe you should have. And then I'm like, but I tried to gain access to it, and I would have loved it and cherished it. But like, however, I had other priorities. I made other priorities, and I have to let people, I think, again, Angela, because we don't have the opportunities to discuss and to talk about these things in the moment, we like I'm in this book, she's going back and revisiting all this stuff. And not only that, in that, like you said, she loves numbers and she has superstitions. She feels irresponsible for this because what she didn't realize that she had was she also had some foresight. She also
sure
had
did.
some wisdom. She knew these things were ordering themselves in this way. This lifestyle can't be healthy. This relationship can't be healthy. She even goes back and thinking that and watching and feeling that her mother maybe even have known about her impending doom or was trying to prepare, and we're all out here like trying to prepare people, and people go like, why are you doing that? Because I'm trying to, oh my God, there was one thing which she says, I think I did it to protect.
Yeah.
And how many times have I said that on here? Silence. We are taught that silence is doing a thing wrong, but in the person that's silent, they're trying to protect. Protection comes up first. The first layer of that is protection. Go ahead.
And historically, you speak up, you get knocked down. I mean, this is across the board. If you're not in power, you speak up. There's a penalty. So yes, learning to be silent as a protection is a given. And so we're and there are still people that are in those circumstances, but for the most part, I mean, her story is so fascinating to me because she was old enough. I think she was 7 when they left Mississippi. So she's old enough
I'm just going to interrupt you right quick. Belinda said their group is also reading the book that Dr. Skip Mason has the group Vanishing Black Atlanta. So this book is a good book. And
I won't give too many spoilers, but she starts in Mississippi. They move to Atlanta, and her mother's going to school, right? And so and her parents are divorced, so she's biracial in Mississippi. Then she moves to Atlanta, and then her mother marries a black man. So then it's like she experienced one
she
form
has no
of
identity.
Discrimination here. Yeah. Then she forms another. She comes to Atlanta, which seems more progressive. Another piece of that being biracial, right? So first it's biracial because
biracial in the 60s and in the 70s. So
she's just like there was she experienced two sides of biracial discrimination. In an abusive household, and she doesn't hide the fact that her mother was murdered by her stepfather, and so this is and then to move on when she was about 18 or 19 years old, and to move on from it, she literally just shut it down, and she wiped her memory. And this is where I understand that because I have that ability. I don't know that it's a good thing, right? But I do have the ability to completely erase something from my mind.
Human nature. It's human nature.
And I think we all in trauma That's how we protect ourselves, right?
That's where we are. That's where we are.
It's just blocked, right? And so
you can move on.
She was 20 years before she came back to it even more. And so again, it's like I say, it's a story of knitting together your past to better understand it. When what was happening to you at the time, like I said, she had a knowing, but no one to talk to about it and no one to validate. And everybody's trying to protect each other, right? She's trying to protect her mom's trying to protect her. And there's no discussion. And now there's no way to have a discussion. But I tell you what, she doesn't claim it's magic, but there's some magic happening of things that happen for her to be able to get the information. I don't know if you've reached the point where you're not there yet, so I'll leave it alone. But she doesn't. It's synchronicity at a minimum, but there is, what do you want to call it? Direction of God. I don't know, intentions. She has a moment that I'm like, this is the way she's able to get the information that will allow her to piece this story together is divinely directed. I'm like, she's been directed to write this story.
Yeah.
And
when you think about it, there's so many people that have that story. And that's how I feel about this item. It's like, it's a thing that should have gone into the museum. Yeah. And I'm like, because everybody else had a value. I'm like, I'm just like, I don't know how I'm going to go beyond this. I think it's going to be a thing with me forever because it signifies, and that's what it is. Well, and it signifies something.
And let's talk about that for a second. That items can become imbued with meaning and spirit, right? And historically, we've had talismans and amulets, and there is nothing wrong with that. And the loss of that is a true loss, is a grief and a loss. And it's, and this is where I really liked the work of Marie Kondo coming out of Japan and her organizing technique where you thank items, you thank every item, because she's Shinto. And I don't know very much about Shintoism, but she actually she was like in a Shinto temple, right? So she brings a religious aspect, and they believe in, it was called animism, that everything has a spirit, right? And I think that she tells stories of people going through stuff and saying, this cup right here is just, there's something about this cup, and you find out some kind of attachment, and you find out that was the grandparents' cup who was at Hiroshima, right? And that this is the cup that survived. How do you know? They didn't know, right? They have to find out. So my point is that I don't think we honor enough that things can have a spirit.
That's it right there. And it's in the honor. It's an honor.
And that it resonates, and it may not resonate with everybody, but that it resonated with you is significant. Yeah. And this is the problem. This is where, after somebody passes, you have family members fighting over things, and things get, somebody doesn't realize it's important, or they don't care.
Exactly that.
It's fraught, and it's hard, and it's a loss. And I'm sorry that you're experiencing this loss. And I want to honor your experience with this, and to say that's, it's not a small thing. It's not a small thing. Right. And I think about so many things that I wish I had kept, right, or that I still had, right, that my parents would have gotten rid of, right, or things that were related to my grandparents, and there's so many people, and who knows where something went, right, and so it's to say, and there's nothing wrong with that, and it's significant, and there is a bit of a talisman in this story of Memorial Drive, of an item that I'm going to say magically that managed to survive, right?
All right. Belinda has another comment, says she is trying to find herself after great tragedy through trial and error, her trauma and pain. Yeah. And you know what? And I wish more of us did that, because when more of us begin to speak about that out loud, because one of the things we're witnessing and reading and listening to or reading, it's like she's trying to figure this out by herself. You don't hear her say, oh, I get to go to this amazing group of women or these amazing group of men. It's like every moment of this is her doing it alone. Not even, and I don't know if there's a partner, maybe because there's a brother, Yes. There is, and she said something, and again, we don't want to, but it's a book discussion, so I don't know that there are any kind of spoilers, because the stepfather, it sounds like from where I am, there might be a moment of being discussing because she's been wanting to ask him questions, but just noticing whatever revelation or resolution she's going to come to with this, I'm like, man, she is figuring this out alone in a room wherever she is. Yes, sir. She says spiritual warfare is real. Be encouraged. But and I want to say to everybody is you just don't have to do it alone. Like Angela says, on the day we realized that we were going through the same thing was simply because at an event I decided, hey, well, I'm going to talk about this because I felt like, I had to host this thing. I had to stand there. Waves of grief were coming out. And actually, Angela, on the day that I said that, we were weeks away. We were literally weeks away from my mother's death. And I'm standing there trying to moderate this event. And I'm like, y'all, let me tell y'all, this is what's going on. I'm having to make some decisions in my life, while I'm trying to encourage all these women and men to do well in their business over breakfast. And I'm like, but let me tell you what happened when I get here and when I leave here, all of that has to go on. And that's when I freed you. Because I had asked, how many times had I asked you, Angela, come to breakfast, come to breakfast, come to breakfast. And you had to say no. But you were there and dealing with all that you were dealing with just, on your own, and you had met, as a matter of fact, you were beyond your mother's passing and well into your grief. And there you were sitting at the head of the table as my keynote, trying to tell us all how to pivot, not even realizing, and we didn't even know that you had gone through this. Like I said, all I know is Angela couldn't show up.
And in an ongoing caregiving situation with another family member, and so not only did I have the grief of my mom's passing, then I have the grief of my life change of taking care of of my sister who is severely disabled and requires constant care. So that morning, for me to get there in the morning, I had to arrange for a caregiver to come at a time that she usually didn't come. Right. And it's like, I was like, can you please come in the morning? And she was, and she lived a distance away, and bless her heart, she's like, she got up real early in the morning to come so I could go. And it's like the amount, like you say, just the amount of work that it took me to get out of the house. Right. And it's like, I had to coordinate multiple schedules and pay somebody and, and hope that she could get through Atlanta traffic to my house in time for
you can get through Atlanta traffic to the event.
Exactly. And so, and I say all this to say is, again, honoring that. And you pinged me with this, I think yesterday, is like, we just don't know what people are going through. And here's the thing that makes women amazing, right? That makes me love women, meaning loving us as women, is that we will get ourselves dressed up, looking good, show up, and look like we are so together. And it is insanity. Like, if you could see the room I'm in, it's insanity, right?
And somebody will be mad.
Yeah. And it's like, well, who she thinks she is, right? And it's like, why does she thinks she's so much, right? And you don't know that person literally has a half of their brain completely somewhere else, because they're trying to figure out, and literally has their eye on their cell phone, because they could be getting a text or a phone call that's an emergency call that will cause them to have to drop everything and get out of there. And it's, and that can be with any sort of level of thing going on. And then we're going to be like, she thinks she all that, right? So it's to be able to approach one another with that. And it's like when men are messed up, they just don't show up, right?
Right. Or they show up and they put it all put it all out there. And it's like, the thing about with men is they got each other's back. Yeah. They will like, bruh, you look like you're going through something.
Exactly.
What's going on over there? You taking care of family. And they got this thing. They have a head nod, what's up, they check in on each other. They stop what they're doing. They deal with, even if think about it, because we had several men at the table
Yep.
coming to breakfast and so forth. I'm gonna just show the picture there. This is what I was talking about. That means that Angela and I both had a good day. But again, both of us were coming out of extreme grief. And Belinda says that trusting someone with your pain is extremely hard, and that's why so many go it alone. Because because you know what happens? It's like they want to know, well, why are you in why is that your situation? You know, people keep saying like, when are we gonna have breakfast again? I'm like, I don't ever want to have breakfast again.
Right.
You know, you don't understand. The last breakfast I had, I was the one checking my phone, making sure my mother was still alive.
Yeah.
Do I want to go to breakfast? I could barely eat breakfast now.
Well, and
you know,
and I think it's something to understand about that as well, because I experienced this with.
Oh, and hello to Tachi. Tachi came in.
Hi,
Tachi. Well.
I experienced this when I had to quit holding my regular events, right?
Yes.
When are you gonna hold a meeting? When are you gonna hold an event? Not only am I just not able to, I mourn the loss of that. I mourn the life that I had that allowed me to do that I didn't really appreciate.
You should do it virtual.
I really should, and that's something that I could do, right? The Zoom, thank God we've got that. But you know, so when people repeatedly would say to me, "Well, why don't you do something? Why don't you do something?" It was not just
opening the wound all the time,
right? It was like getting punched in the bruise, getting punched in the wound every time, because it's like I don't want to go into the entire sordid tale, right? Of saying, here it is. And it's like 20 things have happened that have caused my circumstances to change, and that I cry on a regular basis over what I have lost, right? Which is this sort of public.
And like Belinda said, who would you trust with that?
Right. And then you say that and you wonder, are people going to be like, yeah, she doesn't have it together. See, this is it. And they say, well, I don't want to work with somebody that doesn't have it together. Right. And literally at this point, I'm not even worried about that. I have corporate clients. I had to go back to working, with corporate clients who don't really care. Right. They don't care as long as I'm delivering on my projects and whatever, they don't care. But it's this thing too of like, again, reputation, and there are people who will use it against you. And I think I'm all about being vulnerable and open. But sometimes it's not even about worrying about something being used against you. It's about that you can't say it because it will break you in the moment. And no one should be forced to open the vein if they don't want to. So that's
open the vein.
So that's the other side of it. Yes, we need to be vulnerable and open, but when we can handle it, because there are times that you can't. To speak of it is to wound yourself, right? And it's like because you're not ready. And again, it's like sometimes it's having the bandage on. You have to put a bandage on a thing. You have to put a cast on something. You have to lock it down and close it up so it can heal. And if you take that off too soon, the healing doesn't happen. And so you should never feel compelled. So this is the thing. And again, COVID sort of changed this, but please don't press people, right? When somebody says, I'm not able to, when somebody gives you a no, right? And they say, well, I'd like to, but I can't right now. Leave them in peace with that, right?
Yeah.
And if you want to give someone encouragement, right? You feel like I want to encourage them. Say, is there something I can do to encourage you, right? Instead of saying, well, you just need a cheerleading, right? And I'm a cheerleader. I love to give, and I've had to learn, back that stuff up, right? Do you need a pep talk? Do you need some cheerleading? Do you need somebody to leave you alone and in peace, right? Do you need somebody just to say, how are you doing? You doing okay? And you know what? I miss you, and I accept whatever you can bring right now. And if that means you can't bring anything, that doesn't mean that I'm going to forget about you. It doesn't mean that what you're doing is not important. And I think if we can give that, and that's difficult because there's a lot of pieces in that, and we already have a million things we're thinking about. But if we can just for a second say, if Yolanda's not doing breakfast, there's probably a really good reason she's not doing breakfast, right? And if Angela is not doing in-person events, there's probably a really good reason and a serious reason that that's not happening, and say, what else can I do then? Right. Anyway, that's my little soapbox on that.
And Belinda says you are on point. And then she says, just hold my hand. And she said, like, they had a recent trip. And even just on her trip, you know, she would call her mom and, you know, and check in at the stops and things like that. And they just had a road trip and not being able to do that. And you don't think how these things are hit. And there she is in a vehicle with other people. They're probably going like, what kind of emotions she got going on?
Right. Why is she
over there? You know,
laughing and
but here's the flyer from the breakfast, y'all. And let me tell y'all, it was an amazing breakfast. Angela was able to show up. And actually, Angela, I call this my documentary because this was a great culmination of breakfast. It was Angela, it was Sean Thomas and Cortina Smith. And Angela was the keynote talking about pivot. And the fact that we needed to pivot. You can actually watch a large portion of it, the discussion that we had on YouTube, and I called it a movie because I in fact I documented a lot of the breakfasts and video. Then we were live online for a lot of them, but that particular one is probably what I use and refer back to. In doing a number of the things that I'm doing now. And as you know, in the coverage that I got this week about the soap, I called it my pandemic pivot, and they called it the pandemic pivot and so forth. And actually I got that. And shout out again, y'all. That's why you gotta have a good cousin, okay? My cousin Belinda is the one that on her road trip saw the opportunity and said, hey, you know, she didn't just look at it and go, oh, that's a nice opportunity. She's like, oh no, let me hit my cousin up, because this will be a great opportunity for her. I submitted to it. It's called Fox Soul. And it's, I don't know if they're on television, but they are a streaming service. I'm pretty sure, you know, connected to Fox and so forth. It's a soul. It's a lot of African-American content. And they have something called the Black Report, which I'm pretty sure is going to be a hot show today. They're on Pacific time, but I think 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. But if you do have a business out there, they are looking to, because they do these amazing, they did like a minute and a half.
It was amazing.
A minute and a half on my entering in the soap maker space. And so thanks again to Belinda for that. And not only that, I mean, Belinda has been, we have another cousin. I was asking my other cousin, like, man, I'm trying to, in navigating this whole thing with, you know, the changes of my life, like you said, when I was having some issues, I'm like, I cannot figure this out. And my other cousin said, well, did you ask Belinda? And I was like, I mentioned it. She was like, no, did you ask her, letting her know full on what you need? Because she knows everything. She's been there. She's done this. And then my other cousin was like, you're not going to ask. I know you're not going to ask. And she hung up on me. And she said, I'm going to ask her for you. Because
I'm going to do it right now.
Right?
Yep.
And exactly. And she hung up, and the next 2 minutes later, my phone rang, and my cousin was like, girl, I know you're not over there going through this. Let me tell you, call this, do that. And literally, I was sitting there about to have a literal heart attack. And I had already been in Piedmont trying to manage all of this stuff. And she literally called me, and getting off the phone with her, I could literally breathe. And I made the phone calls she told me to make. And I mean, for the first time in the 4 years I had been dealing with, 3 years I had been dealing with that stuff, I could literally breathe. So she saved me a number of times. So always know from whence your help comes, people.
And understand too that it's probably a pay it forward kind of thing, right? Because especially, so we're just talking about this, like the passing of your mother, right? It's going to happen one time, right? So the people who help you through that, you won't, they've already been through
help
it.
others,
you won't help them, right? You're going to help the next one, right? And I just think about when I was going through it. Sorry, I have, I'm shaking the table. My mom was in hospice, at home hospice. So we had a social worker. She was very young though. And I felt like, I would ask her things and she just was, she tried.
Yeah.
But I reached out to a friend of mine who had been speaking to me, and she knew my mom, and it was through my Ladies Who Launch, through my business community, we become friends. And she had lost both of her parents, and she would periodically just say, you know, if you need to talk about it, here's some things here, you know, and she would just offer a few things, here's some, you know, some things. And so when it came time to, you know, when I knew that I was going to have to make funeral arrangements and whatever, my family's not, you know, I have family here, but, you know, my long-term family's not from here. I'm like, I don't know anybody who knows funeral homes and cemeteries. I'm like, I don't know who to talk to. And I'm trying to talk to the social worker, and she's like, well, you just pick, you pick one. I'm like, I don't even know how to pick one. And so I reached out to her and said, you know, I don't know who else I said, I don't know who to talk to. Even in my own family, the siblings are so distraught. And, you know, I'm like, can you help me? And she taught me through the entire process.
I'm sorry, my sound was up.
That's fine.
And she was probably like, why hadn't you called sooner, right?
Right. She said, you should have called me. She said, let me tell you, here's your options. Here's who we used for, you know, here's who we used with my mom. Here's who we used with my, you know, and
that's what the right person said.
Saving you.
Yeah.
It's like, because I'm like, I couldn't do it. I couldn't figure it out. And
not how come you don't know? And why weren't you this, that, and the other? It's like, why didn't you call me sooner? Why didn't you ask me first?
Right.
I'm
and
there.
Everything you need to get you through this, you call me and I will talk you through it. If I can't be there, I will talk you through it. And, you know, it's like, it's again, not a favor that I can ever return to her. Right. But this is why
pay it forward.
I've always tried when somebody's going through the same things, like, let me talk to you about hospice. Let me talk to you about, you know, whatever. But I was like, you know, it's the sort of things, and I didn't even feel shame, but it's like, I had made it to be, you know, almost 50 years old and never
not having
really had to bury anybody.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's a blessing. My God, what a life I've had that I never had to do it. I was never in charge. Right. And
then we start going back to the book. And Tati said, this is very introspective. Thank you for sharing. I know, Tati, you don't even want to know we don't even remember what we were supposed to talk about today.
I know, we just kind of.
But going back to the book and listening to, because you're wondering, like, man, why is there a memoir needed here in the book called Memorial Drive? And I'll put it back up on the screen, guys. And again, Angela has selected a couple things we talked about. And there is the book right there. I feel like my camera is like always kind of crooked. Memorial Drive, Natasha. What's the last name?
Trethewey.
Trethewey.
TRETHEWAY.
EY.
I knew it was E. I knew it was all E's.
All E's. All E's. She probably goes through life like that. All E's. Like I go through life like all A's, right? But when you think about what we did, when you hear Angela say it was a blessing, because all of us, because think about it, Belinda's mom and my mom were sisters, very close sisters, and they literally passed 2 months apart. Okay. And so me having to deliver the news of my aunt's passing, I knew that was going to usher my mother, you know, on into, you know, you just know, right? Yeah. But when you think about this young woman doing a memoir, you're like, why a memoir? You know, she's the same age as we are. Exactly.
Exactly.
But she has a memoir because she dealt with the full life that we've had. She had to make those decisions at 18. You know, she had to process all of this at such a young life. And then, like you said, so much life ahead of her. There's no way she could have lived that if she stayed in that moment. So we want to honor again her having to go back and relive this, because one of the things that I like that she said, you know, in those 18 years after her mother's death, she's been walking around, even though she thinks that she suppressed it all, she's been processing in her mind, what could she have done that her mother could have lived a little bit longer? Should she have said something about this, knowing that, the stepfather is something odd there, you know, other households aren't like this, you know, other people aren't going through this, that, and the other, you know, they're not having to get through abuse, you know, they're not having to get through verbal abuse, or, you know, they don't then just come home and like, meet a man and he's your stepdad, you know, like, that doesn't end well. So you got to imagine she spent all the time after the worst thing ever happened to her and losing your mother, I have a book that I picked up at the bookstore. You know, Angel said, look around. And I turned around, this book was sticking out at the bookstore. I went looking for a cookbook, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was walking out. I had found the perfect cookbook, and I was walking out, and something said, look over your shoulder, look over my shoulder. There was a book sticking out, and it was called The Autobiography of My Mother.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, go get that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what it is, but I
Mm-hmm.
know I couldn't get past it. One of the first lines inside the jacket, and I never read the book because the answer was right there. And it says, your mother is between you and eternity.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and once your mother is gone, what's left? It's you and eternity.
Yeah.
And people who are facing these decisions, you know, you and I, the difficulty we had processing it in our 50s, because you know I haven't had a birthday for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't even remember when I turned 50,
and you know what? And
'cause
that's
I hated
something.
it.
That's something I would have never ever imagined before losing my mom, is that you don't ever
Yeah.
want to celebrate your birthday because that's your mom, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And it's like
my birthdays
Yeah.
were all about my mother, and
Yeah.
everybody to this day will tell me the awesome birthday parties that I had.
Mhm.
I don't freaking remember them.
Yeah.
I remember them now because of my cousin Belinda. She's like, come on, we got a girl. You used to have it because I was born in October. So my mother would throw these elaborate Halloween parties,
Mhm.
right? And everybody would be there.
Yeah.
And I've got all the pictures,
Yeah.
but I don't guess where
Yeah.
the pictures are. They're in a box. They're in the bottom of the closet.
Mhm.
They're not out. I don't look around. I don't see that. And I had a right before all of this began to happen. For some reason, I had a stack of them that I put in my purse. I don't know why, but I ended up having a conversation with somebody one day about them, and I took the pictures out, and we were talking about them, and then that's when the memories started flooding back in.
Mhm.
And I remember leading up to that. I mean, my mother was shocked all freaking month long. Okay, I watched Family Affair with Buffy and Jody, because
Mhm.
everything that Buffy had, I had.
Mhm.
I tell my kids, every outfit that Buffy comes on that show with, I had. I have every picture that I have. My hair is in those 2 ponies. And I'm like, I had a doll, Mrs. Beasley. You know, I'm like, my mother was a catalog shopper, everything. But I didn't honor that. I didn't know to honor that, because you kind of think it's going on in every household. You
Right.
don't realize
know.
the specialness of it. She says the best parties won't he do it. But even when my mother passed, one of my girlfriends says, I'm coming, 2 of them, I'm coming to you.
Yeah.
I got, because I'm like, I didn't, let nobody in, but they were like, nope, knocking on the door. And I hadn't seen one of them, either one of them I hadn't seen in 20 years, and her memories, she was talking about stuff, and I'm like, girl, what? She was like, girl. And I'm like, that's what. Are we back? Okay,
You're
we're
back.
back. Okay. I think I was gonna say either I froze Angela.
I was like, there was so much feeling in that. It just like,
well,
totally...
my girlfriend, I'm sitting there watching her, even a conversation we had some time ago. She said, one of her best moments was hanging out with my dad and I, because he would take us, we would go experience all the restaurants and all those kinds of things. And me being an only child, I could always bring friends, Sunday dinners at my house, and mom called me in to eat. She called half the neighborhood in to eat, and that's why I kept trying to figure out, like, why am I in this kitchen?
Right.
That was I read in something, I heard something that when you lose a loved one, something that they love, becomes a passion of yours.
Yes. Yes.
And that's why I have food. Girl, honey, I'm dying right now because in this crock pot next to me, I have got some spare ribs, and I put some onion in there. And you know what I did? I put some tomatoes.
Oh, yum.
in there. So
I will tell you,
Dennis,
I
Angela,
regret. I
it's enough
regret
to feed an army.
I regret that I do not live closer to you, because I would figure out how to give me some. I mean, I would be eating well, because I'd always be
It
like, "Can I get a
smells.
plate? Can I get a plate?"
And you know the sad part is there's
I do
nobody
reach.
to eat it. Petty Betty and I'll eat. Like we have so many leftovers. If the dog, I can't. I'm not even allowed to feed him anymore. His stomach can't take it. But it smells. It's y'all. It smells. Look, I'm gonna let the steam. Can y'all see that steam? I just took the top off. It smells so freaking good. And then Petty Betty wants me to put my secret sauce on top of that. And it's enough to feed people. She says everything. Amazon started with my aunt. She talked about Amazon. Honey, my mother would love Amazon. And the funny part about it, my other aunt, we lost my other aunt last Christmas. My mother had 5 sisters. And y'all, we're getting the miracle every day that we still have an aunt. We have an aunt
Blessing.
and you know, with the COVID thing, we can't go see. She has all these nieces and nephew, and we can't be with her. But we witnessed the miracle of her life every day. But I had this one aunt, the one that passed last Christmas. She despised Amazon, and I never ordered Amazon because she was the one aunt that I listened to. She was like, "Man, y'all," and she would always tell us, "Y'all gonna get to where you can't get nothing but through Amazon. You better go support another store." So she could not stand Amazon. Don't ever tell her you bought anything on Amazon because it was just simple. You were gonna bankrupt the world shopping at this one place and so forth. But that's the wisdom of women, guys. And we wanted to come on. We're getting ready to wrap up. I'm glad we ventured away from some of the stuff that we were playing. I don't even remember what we were having a hard time trying to find topics.
We were,
anyway.
and let me just say, we were trying to find something that wasn't gloom and doom, you know, and that was you know, we were going to talk about Halloween and Thanksgiving and just sort of, because like, I mean, when I had the awareness like literally 2 days ago, right?
Yeah.
That we're not going to be able to have a regular Thanksgiving, you know? It's like, and I felt, and literally in the moment I felt stupid, right? Because I was like, I'm thinking, because I'm doing here in Atlanta, there's the big race. Yeah, Londa's talked about it, Peachtree Road.
That's
race.
right.
And so they postponed it to Thanksgiving, hoping they could do it in person. And so they can't. They're not. So they're going to do a virtual race. And so it's very smart. You pay your entry fees. You still get your T-shirt, and you know, and you.
So what do you have to do?
So you pay to enter. You around the 1st of November, they're going to put up an app, right? So you download the app. And sometime over Thanksgiving weekend, originally
you literally have to run.
You
the
go
race.
and run your race wherever you want to do it, right?
Now, do you have to do it all at the same time,
yes.
or you just get the steps in?
So you say, okay, this is when I'm starting my race, right? And you hit start, and that's your start time. And you hit end, that's your end time, and it goes. I
bet you they'll get more people.
I tell you, and so at first I wasn't going to do it because it's 10K. I've done Peachtree before, and I was looking for a virtual 5K. So this would be nice for the fall. Atlanta in the fall is pretty. I'm like, I need to do something.
It's a 10K race.
It's a 10K race, and so it's 6.2 miles. And it's like, I can walk 6.2 miles. I can go out right now. That's not an issue. And I wasn't trying to do, like when I did it before I ran the whole thing, I'm not trying to do all that. I just wanted something. A friend of mine's like, I'm doing the Peachtree, do it. And when I looked at it, I'm like, it doesn't matter. You could take 10 hours if you want to. Like you say, you could start that timer. You're talking about get your steps in, go do your thing, come home, do whatever. It's still going to go.
But on the day of the race, you have a start time, and you have a start time
and an end time. And so then it gets recorded, right?
Right.
So at first,
because the diehards are still going to want to beat their time.
And they're going to want to beat their times. Personal, they're looking for personal records. I don't even know if they're going to do age groups and whatever.
Well, I can imagine people who are, because I know in our family we have they're a father, a son, and a few other people. They do it every year, so I can imagine people will still get in their individual group
and have your shirts. And I was like, and they're actually keeping the T-shirt that says July 4th, right? Because they already had that designed, and on the back they're going to put that it was the virtual
date.
Virtual. And I was like, well, if anything, that's a little collector's item.
And you only get the T-shirt if you actually complete the app. And I can imagine the app.
You don't even have to complete it. They're sending you the T-shirt. So that takes the
Oh,
pressure
wow.
off. You don't even have. So plus, for the Atlanta Track Club, this is their big
This
money
is
maker.
theirs. Yeah. Yeah.
So at first they were like, anybody who registered, we'll defer it to next year, right?
Hmm.
And then they said, well, now if you want to do it this year, right, you can apply it, or you can. And when they get to 60,000 people, they'll stop. They will close registration.
Really?
So there literally
Why?
could be 60. Well, and that's what there's not
Because
gonna
the
be
t-shirt is
people.
the t-shirt is the limited
That's how many
thing
t-shirts
anyway.
they have, right? Is they have 60,000 t-shirts.
Mm-hmm.
But now people can run the Peachtree. They come here to rent. You can run it in India.
Well,
you can run it in
every year I would go and live stream at mile 5.
So
you know, I love my 5s.
You can
So
come.
I'll host a virtual party. So I'll host a virtual party at my look. I don't know, because I used to love getting up early and going down and setting up, my live stream, because mile 5 was the water station, and mile 5 was right there at the High Museum. So I would always have the High Museum as my backdrop. And, there's a beautiful church right there as well. And there's an intersection. I think it's if that's 14th, 15th, 16th Street. So that was my location. And I would sit there, and a number of people in the race, always in the race, would look for me so they could be on camera and then just shout, just great shout out. So, but I can see people still getting together, some groups, because they're already in the track club.
Absolutely.
So,
and you could put together a little something, socially distanced where you are. But, my thought was, and for our family, Thanksgiving has always been the big holiday versus Christmas, because we lived far away. My parents both moved away from their homes. We always traveled on Christmas. So to me, Christmas, I go visit Christmas, right? As we would travel back to see my parents' families who were in North Carolina. We lived all over the country. So we were always traveling. So our family celebration was Thanksgiving. So Thanksgiving still remains our big family holiday. And over the period of the Thanksgiving holiday, we would have multiple, this house, we're all, we're going to different houses, and our, we got family here in Atlanta. We have, we have multiple Thanksgivings
places.
And so I was just thinking, I was like, okay, great. What day? And I'll when there's somebody here with my sister, right? And then I can go and I'll just leave, and I'll do, I'll go do that. Yeah. And it just, and it dawned on me, I don't know that we'll do that. Now, everybody could have COVID tests, somebody said, well, just give everybody a COVID test, but still you can't.
And be careful with that, because that's, what they're expecting to be the next kickoff.
Well, that's it. And it's like, unless it's an instant COVID test, which, if people could get, but they're expensive.
Who can get their hands on that?
So I was like, oh my gosh, we won't. So when you said, let's talk about that, I'm like, oh my God, what are we going to do? And so I'll still figure out how to do it. Right. But it's just like, I'm like, wow, it had not hit me yet that we will not be able to be together in a house at Thanksgiving.
Especially not all the generations.
Not all of us. And we're talking about, multiple generations. Like, we're not going to be able to do it. And it's like, not that we won't do something where, some of the family will come and we'll be outside and they'll be here for an hour. Right. And something like that. We might have, where they stop by.
At first I kind of got excited. Like, one of the things I got excited about, I'm like, oh, I don't have to spend all that money on a meal. But even last year, when we as a family got smaller, we were like, oh, let's go to dinner. Like, we no longer cook for Christmas. We go out to dinner for Christmas, right? That's one of our new. And we tried to do it last year for Thanksgiving, but we were like, there's something about still coming home and having all that food. Right. So we still end up cooking. But Linda has a ministry, and it's actually called Won't He Do It, but they have this thing called Put It on the Porch, which is what they have been doing during the pandemic. So I really want to shout that out. For families that are in need, for the sick, the shut in, and so forth. For anybody that's in need, they have been dropping groceries on the porch for people. And it's a great doing that for Thanksgiving. And they have a Cash App. Put it on the porch. And for anybody that wants to donate, so I'm gonna make that my charity. In fact, my marketing person. One of the things I do on Mondays is I talk about the different marketing of everything, and we were talking about for the soap business, finding a charity, and I'm like, hello, and making donations coming up. Let's see, she says Jessica someone, just call someone and put it on the porch for them to sit down in a Zoom meeting. Cooking, okay. You gotta tell me about that. But also for October, as we get ready to head into October, domestic violence month is coming up. We want to definitely do awareness on that, as well as what is it, breast cancer? Is it breast cancer? Breast cancer.
It's breast cancer, right? Because November, isn't November heart attacks? The red.
Yeah. So we're definitely, that's something that Angela and I want to pay attention to, and get some people on to talk about those things. Also, since we did mention Amazon, guys, if you go to Amazon, but go to smile.amazon.
That's what I use. Yeah.
You can select, and they'll remind you when you go, you go trying to shop on the whim, they'll remind you. Yep. But if you go to smile.amazon, you can select an organization or a charity that they donate to when you do your shopping on Amazon. And I know, and like I said, I never used to shop on Amazon, but now because with the soap business, a lot of things I have to get off of there. A lot of not what I use, but some of the tools and supplies. And also, I'm now shopping Amazon for some groceries because they have Amazon Fresh, and so now portions of what we spend. And who isn't getting a box drop? And actually, I just learned today, I was in a webinar earlier. If you have a handmade or a product and you sell on Amazon, they will actually, you can sell on Amazon. They come and pick it up and go deliver it.
Wow.
So I'm like, this thing. And again, other companies could be doing the same thing, but Amazon, they're just in that forefront of things. So, because I have been wavering, like, man, do I want to sell on Amazon? Because, you start looking at the fees, you got fees going here. And that's the one thing about managing an online business is there are a lot of fees, but, there are fees that reimburse themselves if you're at if you have the sweet price, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have to really worry about the fees, but they do add up and you do start looking at them. But kind of find out, because Amazon, they offer the free, 2-day shipping on for Prime members. That means that they roll up, pick it up, and go.
That's great.
Deliver it. So that's what I'm going to spend the rest of the day learning about that and adding that to the platform. I know you need to go. I need to go. Thanks again. But I will, Belinda, I'll get with you so that we can get that information on the soap site and let everybody know that I am now, because I did raise my prices. Let me tell you that. It is the holiday season.
Yeah.
So yes, it's time, and I actually, we went back to our original price. We had a lot of sales, had a lot of deals. We still have $5 Friday. Where's my camera? $5 Friday. But what we're doing as part of is we're gonna have 5 soaps instead of like all of the ready to ship. So each Friday you'll get to choose from 5 soaps that'll be $5 on Fridays. And the regular prices, we were always $7 to $8.99. But all the new soaps coming on will be $8.99. But guess what, Angela?
Yes.
It's free shipping season. Yay! So if you order 2 bars or more through October, you do get free shipping. And most people order 4 and 5 packs. So check out that.
And what a great idea for Christmas presents and holiday presents, whatever you're celebrating, because they can be, you can ship them.
And we gift wrap.
Right.
We do gift wrap.
Okay. So you get the gift wrapping and you don't have to worry about, it's something that's easy to have sent. Everybody needs soap. Everybody, every human being needs soap. Right. And if they can't, and if they can't use it, they can pass it on. I mean,
I'll tell you, we also have a gift card.
Well, there you go.
And I always tell people, so you don't have to shop and try to guess what, fragrance somebody might like or this, that, and the other. Choose a gift card, okay? And for all of my gift card purchases, I will donate part of the proceeds to put it on the porch and Won't He Do It ministry. So we're going to go and put that information on the site. Again, Angela, what did you say? Pay it forward?
Yeah, pay it forward.
Let me tell you, we did want to mention something about Halloween, then we'll be out. most of the Halloween events they're saying for the kids not to go door to door.
Yeah.
I am suggesting we do it virtually like everything else. Send a kid a online gift card or exchange gift. Make Secret Santa, Secret Pumpkin. So we have introduced at DryerBuzz Soaps and Shop DryerBuzz Secret Pumpkin. Here's a way to do a virtual Halloween. All right, get with your family, get with your group, get with your friends, and especially for the kids. And we do have some really great kid-friendly soaps, right? One little girl, got a picture of a little girl, her mother, she loves Hamilton, and I have the Hamilton soaps. And she bought her the Eliza, which was the cucumber melon. But just remember, as a little girl, getting your own first perfumes, and your own stuff, right?
Right.
So go and get a gift card for the kids and decide what time of day. Set a deadline that everybody has to have all of their e-gift cards sent. Just imagine getting all those notifications. Kids that can't go trick or treating. But now they can get these notifications that they've gotten another gift card. So other businesses that are out there, let me know if you have a gift card or if you want to participate, and we'll list you on the site as well. And so for Secret Santa, we're going to be around. But for Secret Pumpkin, let's do Secret Pumpkin.
I love it.
I'll be sending you a secret. I can't tell you because it'll be a secret, right?
It'll be a secret.
And it's a secret up until they get the email, because they're going to know it's from you because they
right.
email. But even on the email, I mean, you can use an alias now on email. So don't fret about Halloween. Everybody, please go forward. Be safe as you are planning how to get with your family. We do have to do some things different. And if you want to spend the holidays together, go ahead and quarantine.
Quarantine.
Just quarantine and say, hey, listen, okay, I've been home, I haven't been out. Now I can really go
and get a COVID test. And
there you go.
I was thinking, a couple of days before Thanksgiving is probably going to be pretty busy, but there's testing available. Everybody get tested and then quarantine for There you go.
I don't know. I went out to a networking, and I'm like, oh my goodness, you do have to worry for at least a couple of weeks when you are out and about. You have to watch yourself for fevers. You gotta. I mean, it's interesting.
No, you need to. Yeah, you got to monitor, and so it is, and that's the additional stress that you have. Stress at being at home, and then you go out, and then you got to be. They say then you're just counting the days down. Okay, it's been how many days since I went? I went to the grocery store for the first time in over 6 months.
How was that?
I went to Sprouts, and I went to Sprouts Farmers Market. It's small. And there was something
because they don't have huge crowds. Yeah.
I called. Our Sprouts gets really crowded. I called to make sure they had the thing that I wanted, right? And so I was looking for a supplement, right? And I was pretty cool. They had somebody there handing out masks. I had a mask. Everybody had a mask on, but you couldn't come in without a mask. And they had a box of masks. But about, I was just trying to be in and out very quickly, and it wasn't very crowded. But, I was in the store maybe 5 minutes, and I was just looking around at everybody in their masks, and everybody's got their heads down, and they're trying to get their stuff. And and all the employees were wearing gloves and masks. And I just became overwhelmed with sadness, and I'm like, it's just so sad, right? And it was, and I'm like, I wasn't afraid. I was just sad, and I was sad for everyone. Right?
Let me ask you a question, because this appears to be on the horizon. I know a lot of people are talking about it, especially now. Everybody's ready to get their flu shots or not. Would you do the vaccine?
Not until it's been tested. If they rolled out a vaccine next month, it's too soon. It's too soon. But eventually, sure, with a properly tested and vetted vaccine, I would do it. And I had all my other vaccinations, right? I spent time about 20 years ago in South America and in West Africa, and I had to get yellow fever inoculations. I redid polio, measles, mumps, rubella. I did those vaccinations then. I didn't feel like I had any issues. But
because people are saying it. I mean, it's probably
but you can't rush a vaccine. You cannot rush a vaccine. And I was talking to someone, I guess, young person, who had never heard of thalidomide. And so one of the big things with vaccines, and maybe people don't remember this, because this would have been when our mothers could have been taking that drug. It was an anti-nausea drug that was a vaccination. It was actually was an injected thing, and it caused severe birth defects. So it was for pregnant women, and it caused babies to be born without limbs. And so they were called the thalidomide babies. This was particularly big in Britain. And so that right there was sort of in the modern age. That would have been in the 60s. That was the sort of the end of, this was the beginning of a new rigor in testing of vaccinations and medications. And so anytime I think about a vaccine, I'm thinking about thalidomide, right?
Yeah.
And so
my mother was an OB nurse during that time, and I remember even when they came out with the vaccine. What is the one that that they're giving young people now?
HPV,
the HPV.
Well,
and she didn't endorse that.
I tell you, I know of doctors who have said, screening for HPV and for
is enough
for Pap, doing Pap smears for cervical cancer are very easy, and if you catch it early, it's easy treatment versus the risk of side effects to vaccine, because any vaccine will have side effects. I am not an anti-vaxxer. Please don't come after me if you are, if you're anti-vaxxer, but I do think that there's balance in these things, and an opportunity cost. So absolutely, I would take a well-vetted vaccine. I would do it,
and that's what we ask for, and that's what we don't ever get. Vetted.
And so
we don't live in a world that's not a thing anymore. Well vetted, that's not even a thing anymore. We don't even have a vetted president.
No, I am not going to be the one though that's first in line to get it. And I will not get it.
Well, those first in line to get it has already happened. People are already in the tests and the clinical trials.
It's true.
And so forth. And I think it's something that we can have some real time data, but again, you still want to see. But I think that, in order for us to get back, and I don't even know how to say get back to, because how do you even I don't know that we can even get back to, but I think going forward, there needs to be some precautions. I don't know that it even needs to be the coronavirus vaccine, because it seems to be some other things that, would have kept us out of this, that needed to change. Just coming into 2020 with some kind of reduction plan. And we still don't even have that kind of reduction plan going on for 2021. There are some things that, and I have always said this, that we as humans on this planet, should not have the thought that we get to do forever and ever. Some of these things need to change, and a lot of it having to do with our climate. And
absolutely,
I just got a tweet from Pine Sol, because they are now getting it. They apparently just got approved that they can now be considered a germ killer. And so now Pine Sol commercials are all over social media. And I tweeted, I'm like, but wait a minute, your commercial says that the Pine Sol has to sit for like 10 minutes. Who leaves a cleanser on a counter floor or anything?
Oh my gosh, 10 your house would smell of Pine Sol so strong.
And I don't, and again, don't, like Angela said, don't come at me. Well, they've already at me. They've already at me and trying to explain and asking if I have any other questions. But when have you put down Pine Sol
and left it for 10 minutes?
Oh, but wait, people talk about shame. People wanted to come at Black people because we do let cleansers marinate.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Remember
that's
before
cultural.
the pandemic, and they were like trying to say Black people put down the cleanser and let it sit for a bit.
Oh,
and people were like, "Well, don't nobody do that but Black people." Now, where are we?
No, I've personally experienced this, and it's like, and I'm like, how long you gonna leave that in the bathtub? Oh, I'll come back about 15 minutes. And I was like, oh my Lord, the smell.
And I know exactly you're talking about the bleach and the
I smell of bleach and soft scrub. I'm like, I'm getting loopy. I was like, good Lord. That's like, oh yeah, I'm gonna put that down.
And Pine Sol does have a Black spokeswoman. I
was gonna say though, that stuff shines, man.
Leave it for 10
leave
minutes.
That bleach on there you leave that Pine Sol. Yeah.
Please, y'all, don't mix your bleach with your Pine Sol.
No.
Mix with anything, you're gonna run you out of the house.
You do not use bleach with anything else. Do not
Tati
use
said,
bleach.
yes, we do that. And hate the smell of pine sol. I love the smell of pine sol.
Oh, I hate it.
Because but think about it though. How many times have I said, even in this pandemic, going into these places,
You want
the
to
one
smell
thing
it.
we
I
are
don't.
not smelling is
Oh,
I don't
that
smell the cleanser, and I need to smell. When I go up in the grocery store, I need to smell some bleach. I need to smell some pine sol. So welcome Pine Sol, because everybody's been buying Clorox and everything else.
So now Pine Sol, be a run on Pine Sol.
Yeah, and Pine Sol. Hey, maybe we need to hit up Pine Sol to support leading
Be
women.
a sponsor, right?
So, but let your Pine Sol sit for 10 minutes. And so when I was like, I don't remember leaving it. You know, I don't know. Maybe we need to go.
Yeah, you do that.
Bye, Angela. All right. It's been great.
That's your leading women words of wisdom. Leave your Pine Sol for 10 minutes.
10 minutes. But that's how they got approved as
interesting. As a germicide.
As a germicide and for the pandemic. She says when they give it to their families, you can't trust anything of the virus. Right. And somebody said let the politicians take it first and let's see what happens.
Exactly.
Guys, this has been an amazing Wednesday. This is definitely going to be one for the record books and the archives. If you know people that are going through or have been through anything that we described today, please share this with them and let them know that they are not alone. That's why we call this Leading Women Weekly Check-In. Just stop for a minute and check in and just say, listen, don't do this alone. Just which is a great show. Don't do this. You are not alone.
Yeah.
What you are is everybody's looking at you like, because they recognize what you are going through, but have suppressed it like the book. Again, Angela has us reading Memorial Drive. It is Natasha say it again.
Trethewey.
I'm always trying to read it backwards in the screen there. Trethewey. Winner of the Pulitzer Prize. This is a daughter's memoir, and this is a young woman who lost her mother at 18 to, no doubt, domestic violence, and coming back and trying to process why her life continued in such a way. And I'm halfway through, and it's literally, if you do the audio book, it's a 4-hour read, 4-hour listen. But definitely still, get the book and all of those kinds of things. And we'll be back with you guys next Wednesday. You ready to go, Angela?
I'm ready.
We've said and done it all.
We've said it.
Oh, we do need to run and check out Tamron Hall is on today, and she is diving into the mask controversy, why people are considering it a protest. And we in now. You've only missed a segment of it, so go and check it out. Really great show, y'all. All right, Angela, tell them bye.
Bye.
Oh, more episodes that you want to listen are at leadingwomenweekly.com.